Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to the first weekly update of 2023. So there's lots of exciting news to go over here this week, a lot of it from the CES show that's happening in Vegas this week. And there's some very interesting innovations, things like heated seatbelts, and also, sadly, some things that are actually going away, which I'll talk about later in the video here. So be sure to stay tuned for all of that and more. So the first, really the biggest automotive news probably from CES was the Ram 1500 Revolution debuted. And so this is their fully electric Ram, and they didn't mention anything about the range extender gas version that they hinted at last year, so we'll have to wait a little bit more to find out about that one. But as for this one, we don't have many technical specs yet either, but we do have lots of interesting new features here to cover. But first, for the specs we do know, some of them are that it's going to be an 800 volt electrical system, and it'll be able to do 350 kilowatt charging to add 100 miles of range in just 10 minutes. They also claim it'll be a leader in range, towing, payload, and charge time. So if Ram can actually deliver on that, expect those specs to all be better than the competitors. Next, let's talk about the design. The truck is on the STLA frame platform, which is a body-on-frame platform that mounts the batteries in between the frame rails. And since there's no engine, the cab was able to be extended 4 inches longer than the regular 1500 to provide an even roomier interior than the already very roomy interior in the crew cab Rams. And it may not be too obvious from the pictures, but the front end is lower and wider while still having fenders that can accommodate 35-inch tires, which is a little hint of what's possible for future variants potentially. They did also mention that the motor housings, they can actually put bigger, more powerful electric motors in there as well for faster versions, although they didn't tell us how much power this one does. In addition to the tuning fork lighting signature, there's also 3 amber lights in the grille there, suggesting this truck will have a width similar to the TRX, where you actually have to federally have those on there for legal reasons. And so that suggests this is a pretty wide truck. And the windshield is also more of a rake to it with that lower front end, and those two things combining to improve aerodynamics. Other aero aids include the flush door handles, hidden tow hooks, and camera side mirrors, which may not make it to production. We'll see about that. But out back, it's totally fresh as well, with more bold styling, especially with the way you have the lighting there, but also you have the split tailgate. There's even an interesting C-pillar and body line there to separate the cab from the bed. It is all one piece though on this truck, so the bed isn't physically separate like it is on a traditional pickup truck. There's a lot of tricks back there though in the bed. As you can see, there's a sliding portion there that can extend the end of the bed to the end of the open tailgate, and it even has a mid-gate just like the Chevy and the GMC to pass through not only into the cabin, but also it can, if the items are narrow enough, it can pass them all the way through into the frunk, which no one else has done yet, so that's pretty wild, and I'll get more to the frunk in a minute. But also that second row slides enough that you can still use those second row seats when the mid-gate is down, which is something the GM trucks can't do. Those have a split, so you can use like one of them if you don't need the full mid-gate down, but this you can have the whole thing down and still have people in those seats. And on top of that, there's also a little third row of jump seats mounted to the mid-gate that can deploy when it's down to carry more people. So I believe this is the first 3-row pickup truck in the world, which is very innovative, very creative, and I mean, it's just very impressive. These are these kind of creative things that we were really impressed by from Ford with the Lightning, and then there was more innovation with the GM trucks, and now Ram has just taken it even one step further with the creativity and the innovation, and it's really impressive to see how much they're thinking outside of the box with all these things. Just wild stuff in my opinion. But anyway, getting back to the front here, in addition to the pass-through, it appears to be pretty big here. It has some rails for accessories, it has cup holders, hooks, outlets, all that stuff. The rest of the interior is also pretty cool with all that ambient lighting, and while a little bit of this stuff is concept fun, like the steering wheel that can retract, most of what you're seeing here I'm guessing should be on the production truck, including the 2 14.2-inch touchscreens, with that lower one being able to slide out of the way to allow that pass-through of items, and it can even be removed. The center console also looks, fairly similar to a regular Ram otherwise, but one cool trick is that center console can actually be removed, at least on this concept. You may also be wondering where the gauges are, and it appears that Ram is planning on putting all the info on a huge augmented reality head-up display, and so hopefully it will work with polarized sunglasses, because many head-up displays don't, and it's not as big of a deal whenever it's just like an extra, speed read out there on the head-up display, but whenever you have, everything, your range, your speed, all your necessary information only on a head-up display. I really hope it'll work, in any lighting situation with any kind of sunglasses, polarized or not. That's going to be really important. So we'll see how that all works. But anyway, there's lots of other, smaller little things that I'm not going to cover because I'd be here for another 20 minutes. But a couple of the last big ones here are that it has a glass roof that's electrochromic, so it can be dimmed on demand. And it also will have a shadow mode that can follow you while you walk at low speeds for short maneuvers. So you can kind of like ghost ride this truck, interestingly enough, which seems like it could be potentially problematic. So we'll see how that ends up working in reality. There's also a Ram charger robot, supposedly, you'll be able to install in your garage that can slide itself under the truck for wireless inductive charging, which also I could see that being a little hard and tricky to actually implement reliably. And how quickly it would actually charge with the inductive thing versus just plugging it in. I mean, it's not that hard to get out of the vehicle and plug it in every night. We do it with our Mach-E, but, this could be a cool little thing. It's certainly a cool party trick nonetheless, for those who want to spend the extra money for that. But, just again, more creativity and innovative stuff here. There's also a projector on the front of the truck that can display info or even play a movie, supposedly. So we'll see the production version of this truck later this year, they're saying. It'll go on sale in 2024. So really not that far away. And so that's why what you're seeing here, a lot of this stuff should be production ready kind of stuff, or very close to it. So very impressive. Like I said, I was really blown away by this thing, even though we don't have any solid specs for it yet. Just all these creative features, it's just going to be so fun and really just adds to the ownership experience of one of these things, I'm sure. And so anyway, bravo Ram. I think that is fantastic. And I'll get to the other CES debuts here in a couple of minutes, but I first want to touch on two other stories of normal gas-powered vehicles that are notable here. And I think a lot of you enthusiasts that enjoy gas-powered stuff will be into these. So I want to cover these first. So Dodge has also announced that their final last call vehicle will be debuting on March 20th after being pushed back a bunch due to prototypes supposedly blowing motors. They've supposedly figured that out, it seems, and so now they're ready to proceed with the debut here. So the debut will actually be open to the public as well, with Dodge renting out the Las Vegas Motor Speedway for drag racing events, ride-alongs, a car show, and even celebrity appearances, they're saying. And so we still don't know much about the car beyond the rumor that it'll likely run on E85, and it's likely the highest horsepower muscle car that Dodge has ever made, at least as far as production vehicle stuff goes. And so we also still don't know if it'll be a Challenger, a Charger, or if it'll be offered on both. But it's great to at least have a date to look forward to here. And so March 20th should be a fun day. The other vehicle I want to mention here is that there's another high horsepower car that's just been teased, and that is the Aston Martin DBS 770, which sadly they announced will be the ultimate finale to a bloodline, confirming this will be the send-off to the DBS, which I'm very sad about. I'm a huge DBS fan. I even have a little model of one down here. I really love the DBS, so this is actually really sad news for me to see that it's going out. It'll be going out with a bang, which is great. But, we had heard talks that there's going to be like a next generation DBS, and maybe there still will be another one, after this that's just a totally new car. But man, I mean, it's just such a gorgeous thing. It's so awesome, especially with the twin turbo V12 and stuff from everything I've seen. I've never driven one, but yeah, anyway. Moving on here, like the DBX 707, the 770 number likely refers to the metric horsepower, meaning this car will likely have 759 horsepower here in America, and that'll be about 44 more horsepower than a regular DBS. And beyond the power, Aston says it'll have a re-engineered, sharper dynamic focus coupled with exquisite design. And speaking of the design from the teaser videos here, it doesn't look like any of the main DBS styling traits will change. So expect just probably more aggressive bumpers, kind of like what you saw in the DBX 707, something along those lines, I'm guessing. There'll be some new wheels probably, and probably not much else. I mean, from the teasers there, everything that's a main component looks to be about the same. So that's a good thing, though. The DBS looks fantastic, in my opinion. They don't have to mess with the styling. It looks great. Just give it more power, and I think that'll be fine. The last thing they did reveal, though, is that it's going to be limited to only 499 of these things will be built for the entire world. Yeah, so we'll have more info and a full reveal on it soon. They didn't say exactly when, but it's it's going to be sad to see that go. And there's speculation that will probably be the end of the V12 as well, you know, which certainly makes sense. This is the last main model to use it. And, you know, we know, of course, the V12 Vantage and stuff are very limited, you know, things as well. So this is probably the end of the V12 at Aston Martin, which is also a very notable, you know, monumental thing here. So, again, we'll wait to, you know, confirm that. They could maybe do, you know, this carryover motor in a new gen DBS. We'll have to see. So until they say that, you know, for sure, I'm not going to, you know, announce that here just yet. But, you know, we'll see what happens. I'm not optimistic about the V12 sticking around, though, sadly. But anyway, getting back to the CES stuff here. Honda and Sony have revealed a concept version of their first car here together. We still don't know what the model will be called, but we do know the new brand that Honda and Sony are making is going to be called Afeela. And so, not the worst name. It's not as bad as BMW's D, for example. But I feel like even shortening Sony Honda Mobility, which is the name of the conglomerate here, into SHM would have probably even been better to just call it SHM. You know, it's kind of a playoff like BMW and others like that. I don't know. Afeela just, you know, sounds very 2020s. You know, we'll see what happens. Anyway, the concept looks totally different than the past two Sony concept cars. And unfortunately, I actually think those old concepts look slightly better. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. I don't think this one looks bad. Autoblog, I think, actually mentioned it looks like a toned down Ioniq 6 from Hyundai. And I kind of agree with that. Moving on to the other stuff here. The bar in between the headlights there is a screen that can display various info and can also be customized. Size-wise, it is actually about the same size as a Hyundai Ioniq 6. And inside, it looks pretty production ready too, with full width screens there. But sadly, there's no mention of whether or not there's a PlayStation inside. But they did say that passengers will have all kinds of entertainment options. It also will have 45 cameras and sensors for its safety tech package, and they claim it'll be capable of level 3 autonomous driving in some situations, likely just on the highway. And they didn't share very many mechanical details. The gauge cluster shows it'll have over 234 miles of range, at least in this concept here. And they did reveal it will be all-wheel drive, and it has wider rear tires than the front, so it should be a rear-biased, you know, electric motor setup, I guess. And it'll have a double wishbone front suspension and an independent multi-link rear. So that's basically all the hard points that we know about. Lastly, even though Honda dealers were saying, and I talked about this if you watch these weekly updates regularly, Honda dealers are like, oh, like, you know, Honda really loves their dealers. They're not going to want to cut us out of this new brand. And I called it back then. I was like, there is no way. Everyone wants to get rid of the dealers. Every car company would love to get rid of them if they were honest with the public, I think. And sure enough, I mean, it didn't take much brains to call this one, but Honda confirmed here that that they'll be selling them primarily online, so, you know, again, they said primarily online. I suppose there's a little door open there to maybe sell through a dealer if someone really wants it that way or something. I don't know. We'll have to see. But it's a brand new brand. It's a golden opportunity to, you know, pull a Tesla and sell them online, and that's it. So just gotta say, for those dealers that are shocked by this, you shouldn't have been shocked. And, you know, I think that automakers are really secretly upset about these markups because they certainly hurt sales. And so I just hope that the dealers enjoyed the markups while they lasted. It looks like the markups are probably going to go away here in 2023, and they'll be left with really damaged customer relationships and car companies like Honda desperately trying to cut the dealers out and coming up with new brands. Ford's working on workarounds for their electric stuff to have that be separate so they can cut out the dealers. Everyone wants to cut out the dealers, and 2022 was a prime example of why we need to cut out the dealers because of these markups and just the abuse of power that they have. They're the gatekeepers to the brand, and the brands don't enjoy that, you know, being jerked around by, you know, franchises. And so anyway, I'll get off my soapbox there, but you know, I mean, this is a no-brainer to cut out the dealers here. Golden opportunity. I'm very happy to see Honda doing this here. And so pre-orders will be opening up in 2025, and the first deliveries in North America will begin in 2026. And Honda says they'll be building them at a factory somewhere in North America. And BMW has revealed their Vision Dee. That is the official name of this thing, which was teased previously as just D before for the, you know, assistant, the personal assistant part of this car. But the whole thing is actually called Vision Dee. Really, again, is pushing the limits of my maturity here as far as why they called it Vision Dee. Anyway, apparently D is an acronym for Digital Emotional Experience, but that still doesn't make it any better of a name for a personal assistant, in my opinion, especially whenever you need to summon D. Anyway, as for the interesting styling here, you may think this is just some crazy design for this show car, but it's BMW, so we should know better that, just obviously you got to just be cynical with every single move they make, because it seems like they're just destined to just go to the most polarizing thing possible with all their stuff. So BMW's design chief actually says about this show car that it shows their new and pared down design language, and that BMW will be simplifying the visual language of the whole lineup in just the next 3 years. Now, in previous interviews, they said that stuff like a BMW X3 isn't going to get too crazy with the styling because they want to, have some mainstream appeal still. So we'll see just how much of this stuff extends into the whole lineup. But it sounds like either BMW is trying to desperately ditch the enormous grills that everyone hates, and they're just trying to zigzag a different way, or, this is just an overblown statement and they're not actually going to change that much. We'll have to see. But supposedly this is what most BMWs will look like in the next 3 years. I am kind of skeptical of that, but this is their new class architecture that they're going to be debuting these new EVs on, brand new platform and all that, and supposedly we'll have this new styling language as well. I gotta say though, at least it doesn't have an enormous grille, so I think it does look a little bit better than some of the recent BMW stuff. So I don't know. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. I also think it does look a little bland as well though. So I mean I don't know. That doesn't, to me, that car does not look luxurious. It doesn't look like it's a high-end expensive vehicle. But anyway, the black part up front there is actually 2 screens that BMW says can produce different facial expressions and express moods such as joy, astonishment, or approval visually. And I hope that kind of stuff stays on the concept. I know a lot of car companies, especially on concept cars and stuff, they love doing these animated faces and things like that. Maybe it truly is the future. I don't know, but it just seems gimmicky, and I really wonder how many people truly would actually want something like this or even use something like this. As for D, the aim is to transform the car into an intelligent companion, and they say you can supposedly use natural language when talking to her, and that she can integrate the customer's everyday digital worlds into the vehicle at all levels. Whatever that means. What digital worlds? There was random, I think they're having metaverse stuff in the promo materials and all that. So I mean, I don't know. Some of that stuff's kind of beyond me, so maybe it's lost on me. Maybe I'm too old for that or something. I don't know. But the whole thing is just odd and bizarre, and just seems to really be appealing to the CES crowd and no one else essentially. So I don't know. We'll see, if that's all just concept hype or what as far as all that kind of stuff. But moving on here, on the inside, this concept has dimmable windows, which will also act as screens to protect various things. And that likely won't come to production just because of window tinting laws, if nothing else. As far, you can't have blacked out windows with screens covering them and stuff. So that's probably concept-y. But what BMW claims will come to production in 2025, though, is D. That's a thing that's happening. And the full-width head-up display you can see here, that also is coming, and that'll be able to display various levels of information through what they're calling a mixed reality slider that you use to control it. And lastly, this car's exterior uses an evolution of the e-ink tech that debuted last year. And so back when it first debuted last year, it just basically went from silver to black on an iX, and it just used the same tech you get in an Amazon Kindle. This year though, it now has up to 32 colors, and it can be displayed on 240 individual segments, providing all the fun combinations you see here. And that is some kind of futuristic tech that I think people actually would appreciate and actually pay a premium for. If you could change the color of your car, change the design of your car with the mood or an app or whatever you want to change it with, it's just really cool to be able to do that. I think they're onto something there. The other stuff I'm not so sure about, but I'll give them credit where credit's due. I think that's pretty cool to be able to change your car, whenever you want. Anyway, we'll have to wait and see, if their claim of changing everything radically within the next 3 years actually pans out or not. But very interesting to see Vision Dee at CES there. Volkswagen this week has partially revealed their next EV at CES. It's a hatchback called the ID.7 that thankfully has a much more normal design and it's a lot more digestible and closer to reality here. So the camo, still covers most of the car, but it's not hard to figure out what the production car is going to be like. Just use a little bit of imagination based off what we've seen with the ID.4 and the ID.5 and stuff. And, you can kind of fill in the blanks as far as the headlights and taillights and all that. And they say the camo will be coming off sometime in the second quarter of this year for the, production car there. In the meantime, though, we do have a little bit of info here to discuss. So it's about 194 inches long and almost certainly will be replacing the Arteon in the lineup, especially, given that it has that hatch. And since it's on the same platform as the other electric Volkswagens, it will actually come with rear-wheel drive as standard, and then all-wheel drive should, of course, be an option. And for the rear-wheel drive version, Volkswagen is estimating 434 miles of range on the easier WLTP test cycle in Europe. But even if that's knocked down to EPA range, still should be in the high 300s, I would assume. And this could potentially mean that it beats out the 340 miles of range that the Ioniq 6 maxes out at. So could be pretty impressive as far as the battery goes. Now, there's no word on how big the battery is, but they do used in the top ID.4, that's an 82 kilowatt hour battery. And since it's the same platform, I'm assuming it's going to be the same battery pack. And that's about the same size, I think, as the Ioniq 6 battery. So pretty impressive that they're getting more range out of this thing than that, even though Hyundai obsessed over the drag coefficient and efficiency in the Ioniq 6. It seems like this might actually be able to one-up it. We'll see. But they did also show off the inside too, which thankfully is a departure from the ID.4 in some ways, and unfortunately retains some of the ID.4 parts as well, like having only 2 window switches and a toggle for whether you want to control the front or the back windows, which I don't know who thought that was a good idea in the first place and then thought it was a good idea to continue for future vehicles, even after all the backlash from myself and others. I mean, I was complaining about that in my interior review on the ID.4 as well. I do really like, though, there's a little gauge pod there embedded into the dash as well, which I think is great. And Volkswagen says the 15-inch touchscreen will get a new interface, which is also very welcome. And so there's some positive progress here, even if it's not all progress. There's also illuminated controls for the climate and volume sliders now, something you also didn't get in the ID.4, also a welcome improvement. They also have added an augmented head-up display as well. It still has hardly any buttons here, though, as you can see, and even the air vents are controlled by the screen. So again, some improvements, but still not the abundance of hard buttons that Volkswagen has promised us for the future that they say they're going to be adding back, and I talked about that in a past weekly update. But anyway, this will be going on sale in the US in 2024, with European models arriving slightly earlier, either by the end of 2023 or early in 2024. And they haven't said where it'll be built yet or the price, so we'll have to wait and see if it qualifies for any tax credits. But I have a feeling they're going to try and maybe build this at the same Tennessee factory where the ID.4 is getting built. We'll have to see. But anyway, just great to see Volkswagen come out with, again, just a normal car, and also to come out with a sedan, with everyone else, for the most part, walking away from the sedan market, aside from, again, that Ioniq 6 and a couple of others, to have an electric sedan that'll be attractive, should be pretty good, and, very efficient and stuff. I think it's great, and so I'm really happy to see a sedan. Anytime a new sedan debuts, it's a win in my book, regardless of what it is. So for that alone, I think this is great, and so very interesting to see that. And getting back to some other Stellantis news here, Chrysler has previewed the interior and infotainment for future products with their Synthesis display at CES. And so the screens combine for 37.2 inches of infotainment and house what Chrysler calls the STLA Smart Cockpit and the STLA Brain, which has advanced AI supposedly to adapt the user interface over time to learn the owner's preferences, and it's combined with a virtual personal assistant that mercifully doesn't have an awkward name or personality, at least so far. So great, good job there. Hopefully Chrysler's taking notes from BMW and, avoiding the things that BMW is doing, but we'll have to see. What it does do, though, is it syncs up all the customers' devices, can manage things like calendars, route planning with recommendations for charging and parking, and even more beyond that. It's also paired up with the STLA Auto Drive, which they claim will be capable of doing level 3 autonomous driving. again, we'll see, how all that pans out. But beyond the screens, the seats are also meant to preview future Chrysler interior design using sustainable and recycled materials. And lastly, Chrysler confirmed that they're still on track for the debut of their first EV in 2025, and they'll go fully electric by 2028. So again, we'll see if the airflow, which is likely, going to be the vehicle that's first debuting, which we already saw last year, and I honestly am surprised it's not coming before 2025. Maybe it'll be on sale early 2025 or something, because I feel like we should be seeing a production version of that here pretty soon. But anyway, it'll be interesting to see if that interior switches to this interior, because that had a more traditional interior with a big center screen. It'll be interesting to see if it switches to, what you're seeing here with the synthesis thing or not. But anyway, very interesting to hear that. Seems promising, and you'll have to just stay tuned for that. Lightyear, which is the company that makes the solar-powered Lightyear 1, which is just this $263,000 EV that has enough solar panels that it can add over 6,800 miles a range a year to its 388-mile range. Anyway, they've announced their second, which is a much more compelling model. It's called the Lightyear 2, and thankfully it will have a much more attainable starting price here of under $40,000. Which is really quite a jump to go from $263,000 for your first one to under 40 for the second one here is impressive. So they say it'll be going on sale by the end of 2025, and they say it'll have over 500 miles of range as long as it's sunny enough. So I think their range estimate is just basically suggesting, I think they said they averaged it out over the course of a year, what your average range would be, so maybe a little foggy as far as the actual 500 number there. But anyway, they say that it should combine to produce half the lifetime CO2 emissions of a regular EV. And they already have supposedly over 21,000 pre-orders from car leasing and ride-sharing companies, which makes buying it personally a little less desirable, I think, if you're going to see these things in rental fleets all over the place. But, I mean, it actually makes sense, though, especially for those kind of things where those cars are always sitting outside. It's free charging for the, fleet company or whatever. And it also makes it a whole lot easier for people that even rent them. If you're renting one of these things in sunny Florida or Southern California on vacation or something like that, you just park it outside of the beach all day and you come back, and, it helps these people to not have to worry about charging quite as much. In addition to the fact it's going to sound like it has a pretty big battery here with 388 miles of range. That makes a lot of sense there, and it could be pretty compelling even for consumers if it's just as good as any other $40,000 EV, as far as interior niceties and things like that go, practicality. Plus, you have the perk of the solar, extra range, charging there. That could be, pretty compelling, especially for private owners who, again, park outside at work or at home or both. I think there's a lot of promise in this whole solar, thing, as long as it's efficient and doesn't drive up the price of these things too much. Put solar panels on every EV. I think it's a no-brainer, honestly, and could actually even get you out of a bind if you end up, somewhere where you're running out of battery. You just sit there and wait for it to, juice up a few miles through the sun, and then you can, continue on to the charger or whatever. But anyway, very promising, innovation there, and so looking forward to seeing more from them. Mercedes at CES announced a plan to invest $1 billion to build a charging network with over 2,500 chargers across 400 locations in the United States. They say they're going to be building it in partnership with energy producer MN8 Energy, and the first chargers will actually begin construction before the end of this year. So they're moving really quickly, and that's a lot of chargers. They say they'll be putting them in cities and urban areas near major roads and retail areas. And, while Mercedes EVs, they say, will have an advantage of being able to reserve and paying for charging spots for their car in advance, any EV with the same plug, which is basically all the CCS stuff, those will all be able to use the chargers. So this isn't exclusive like the Tesla Supercharger network or anything. It's going to be open to everybody. And they said some chargers will be able to hit 350 kilowatt charging, but not all of them, I guess. So they'll have a mix of fast and slow, just like other charging networks out there. But that's a lot of chargers, and that should really help the infrastructure to have 400 additional locations for chargers here, 2,500 extra chargers. In addition to Electrify America, I mean, contrary to what you might see, is there's a lot of negative stuff out there. I tested it out on a road trip back in the summer here. I think Electrify America is actually pretty decently functional already. And then, you add in all the other networks, everyone else expanding, other car companies doing stuff, and now you have Mercedes adding another 2,500 chargers across the country. I just think this is great. And it's also really cool that these car companies are stepping up and doing this. They're not waiting for someone else to do it, or waiting for the government to do it, or waiting for the government to incentivize or, subsidize this stuff. They're making the investments with their energy providers who can make their own money off of this stuff. And it's just great to see, like, instead of just waiting around and being like, wow, the infrastructure is terrible, I really hope the government figures that out. They're like, we're doing it. We're investing $1 billion of, which is a huge leap, and really shows that, not only is Mercedes committed to their electric vehicles, but they're committed to the whole automotive sector, switching to EVs, and they're putting their money where their mouth is as well, which is impressive. And this is the kind of stuff, people are saying, oh, the infrastructure's not ready, none of this stuff's ready. And this is what I kept saying over and over again. Just wait. Like, money will either come in or it won't. If the money comes in like it appears like it is, this will work. If the money doesn't come in and this stuff falls apart, then of course they'll roll back the rules and the mandates and all that kind of stuff because there won't be enough. But it sounds like companies are making the investments that are needed to get us to where we need to be, so that this is, infrastructure will be a non-issue, hopefully. So we'll have to see, but very promising here from Mercedes, and so great to see that. And for the last little bit of interesting tech here, automotive parts supplier ZF has debuted heated seatbelts here at CES, and they claim that they have the potential to increase range in EVs by up to 15% when used properly. So the idea here is that occupants would use the heated seatbelts combined with heated seat and heated steering wheel to warm themselves up instead of using the car's actual heater and the blower motor and all that, which typically drains a lot of battery power. Having to convert that battery power into heat, it's very inefficient, especially if you don't have a heat pump in some of these EVs. And so supposedly the heating elements are woven right into the seatbelt, and supposedly there's no other compromises to the seatbelts at all. But my only question is, seatbelts aren't that big, and so maybe it's one of those things you need to experience to understand and believe. But I still just struggle to think that a seatbelt and your heated seat are going to be enough to really get you nice and warm. I could be wrong, though. I think this is a cool idea, and we'll see. Supposedly they say that even though some people are skeptical about it, ZF claims that several car companies want to incorporate them already. So it sounds like we'll be starting to see this stuff in some car stuff here in the future. So we'll have to wait and see who picks it up first and who introduces this first. But very interesting to hear that. And, again, just more creativity and innovation, trying to come up with, workarounds to improve this kind of stuff. It's really cool. And so cool to see that. And moving away from CES for the last few stories here this week. Just a few weeks ago, Auto Forecast Solutions gave us some info on the next generation Mustang Mach-E and the potential for a Mach-E Coupe that's coming supposedly around the same time. I'll link that video above if you missed that one. But this week they're revealing some info about the next generation F-150 Lightning here. So their intel claims the production start date of the next gen Lightning will be August 18th, 2025. They're very exact about their predictions, which makes me think they have some inside intel that's giving them all these dates and stuff. So anyway, August of 2025 is when we'll see a new generation F-150 Lightning, and there will also be 4 months of overlap where they're putting the old truck and the new truck, which is interesting as well. But anyway, this new one will be on the new TE1 platform that won't share anything with a gas F-150 anymore. So they're going to really split off, and like this one where you kind of just had them retrofitting electric stuff into a regular gas F-150, this will be a completely new separate thing, just like you're seeing from GM and now Ram. Ford's going to do that as well here for this new Lightning. And so the platform will be shared with a new electric Expedition and Navigator supposedly as well. But that's not the only new electric truck coming, because the next one might not be a Ranger though, but they have something else coming, with CEO Jim Farley telling Automotive News the next truck they'll make will be a vehicle we do not have today on a brand new platform, a full-size pickup platform. We think it's going to be incredibly high volume. And that's really a curveball in my mind, because in addition to the high volume Lightning, already the best-selling vehicle in America is the F-150. Making an electric version that's so close to the gas one made a ton of sense. Guaranteed home run. I really struggle to see how they're going to top that. I mean, Ford has done a lot of impressive stuff in the past, so I'm not doubting it. It's just really, that's a very high bar. So anyway, It sounds like, they're confident they have another hit on their hands here. But it's also, they're saying it's going to be a full-size truck. I just don't know how different it'll be from the Lightning if that is also a full-size truck still. Like, what else do you do, especially if the new Lightning is also not going to be F-150 based. It'll be a separate thing. It'd be different if, the new Lightning was going to be like, the old one here currently, where it's just based on a gas vehicle, a little compromise, and maybe they would have some other thing that would be a radical thing like the GM and Ram trucks and separate them that way. But it sounds like that's not the case. It sounds like this other truck is going to be something other than that. I don't even know what you do. So, I mean, clearly people at Ford have more creativity than I do as far as what this is even going to be. But apparently Ford's predicting wild sales figures for whatever this thing is. And YouTube channel Miss Electric or Miss Go Electric spoke with Farley at the Lightning launch event earlier in 2022, and he told her this new truck would have radical and perhaps controversial styling, active aero, and be able to offer around 100 more miles of range than the Lightning. So that certainly tells us that it's not going to be a typical truck design. It's, unless they're packing it with more batteries, they're going to have to improve the aero, which means getting rid of the blocky front end. So that's the controversial part, I'm sure, in addition to maybe having some weird lights or something. But aside, I'm just struggling to, maybe they're doing like a Cybertruck knockoff or something. I have no clue what they're doing. But anyway, if all this is true, aside from that, more conventional styling, it sounds like the Lightning may actually end up taking a backseat to this new truck if it really is as awesome as Ford is claiming it'll be. And they also are working on electric Ranger and electric Bronco, by the way, as well. So, I mean, lots of stuff going on within Ford here. All kinds of insanely busy stuff. So, anyway, very interesting to hear, all those details here about the new Lightning and other stuff coming down the road. It's pretty mind-blowing. And moving on here, Alfa Romeo has teased their new sports car that's coming this year in an Instagram post recently, and the caption reads, "Roads are there to be mastered. All you have to do is get on board your Alfa Romeo. Destination, an astonishing 2023." And while the video shows mostly existing Alfas, at the very end they flash up what appears to be a taillight. While the 6C name wasn't confirmed, that's the name that's been thrown around and highly suggested that's what's going to end up being called, is 6C. And Evo has an interesting report that claims it'll be a reworked version of the Maserati MC20. But Autoblog and a few others, and even myself, it doesn't sound like that would add up. As far as, because Alfa Romeo said it would be, affordable or more affordable. I don't think they were planning on having some new supercar. I don't think it was supposed to be a sports car, not a supercar. So I don't think it's going to be MC20 based. We'll have to see. But anyway, it sounds like we'll find out whatever this is sometime this year. And previously, Alfa CEO said they'd like to debut this new sports car in March. So, if they are still sticking to that, then maybe, we can see something here in March, and that'll answer some of our questions here. But anyway, very interesting to hear that. And for the last automotive news story here, Jeep has quietly quit offering the V8 in the Grand Cherokee, at least for the 2-row version here. And so the 3-row L version still shows it as being available, at least for now. And Jeep didn't explain why, but it's almost certainly that they're needing to help out their cafe fleet averages for the MPGs. It's just it's an easy thing to get rid of. And also, they are getting rid of the V8s and everything else. So even if they're not doing it for the cafe stuff, they're probably just going to do it because, they're scaling back the V8 production. Clearly, they're still doing V8s in the Rams and all that kind of stuff. The Wagoneer still gets the V8, at least for now, and all that. But, I think they're just kind of scaling back a little bit and, getting rid of it in the Grand Cherokee where it probably didn't have a super high take rate anyway. It just seems to make a lot of sense. It also makes sense considering the plug-in hybrid 4xe version. It's a 4-cylinder, but it does more power, more torque than the V8 anyway, doing 375 horsepower and 470 pound-feet of torque, plus 25 miles of electric range and 56 mpge. So obviously that's more expensive probably than a V8 Grand Cherokee was, but if you want the most power, it's kind of the best of both worlds as long as you don't demand the sound of a V8. Otherwise, that's going to kind of beat it out there. But still, always sad to see a V8 engine go. And, again, we'll see if the L keeps it around much longer, but I'm, skeptical about that too. So, sad to see the V8 option go away here for the Grand Cherokee. It could return someday, for an SRT version, but I think anything going forward will probably have the Hurricane 6 instead of the V8 for a performance version. So seems like the V8's probably gone from the Grand Cherokee for good, sadly. So anyway, interesting to hear that. And the last also other news story I do want to mention here very briefly is, the death of Ken Block this week has, really been upsetting for myself and, millions of other people around the world. He was an inspiration to me. I mean, the first video of him whipping that STI around in the Gymkhana video just blew my mind, especially as a huge Super Deluxe fan, especially back then. And just the stuff he did with, pioneering, video and just car builds. And I mean, just a visionary in so many ways, in addition to building the DC Shoe Company, which, was wildly popular and successful and a huge, moneymaker, and just a very impressive individual. So tragic and sad to see him pass away. And so I hope he rests in peace. But really just a shocker there with that this week, and really just drives home the point. Enjoy every single day. He started out, that Monday just like the rest of us, and didn't end the same way for him as it did, for the rest of us. And just, just really makes you enjoy and, really appreciate every single day that we get here on this planet, because you never know, when it's your last. And so anyway, not to end on a sad note here, though, I lastly want to give a huge thank you to all of you who are members of the Maran Motoring Club. So we did have a bunch of new members join this week, and so during the New Year's live stream that I did on New Year's Day there, 5 people actually joined thanks to Chang's very generous membership gift that he donated there. And so I want to give a huge thank you to 2 for gifting those memberships, and also to Harris Qureshi, Zachary Ingram, Copper, Angry 8014, DTS, Joao Santos, Colin Koa, Omar Ramirez, and Jay Shang. I really appreciate all the support from all of you. I hope you're all enjoying the perks here of being a member so far, and I hope you enjoy the experience. And for anyone else who'd like to become a member, there's always a join button here on the video page and on the channel page, as well as a link in the description. But anyway, thank you all very much for watching. I hope your 2023 is off to a good start here, even despite the sad news. I hope we all have a great year this year. Thank you all very much for watching. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe also to keep these weekly updates coming all through 2023. And thank you all once again very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.